I've been saying for some time now that Canada, along with other Western democracies under the influence of Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum, are on the slippery slope to fascism. But my voice is a small one, reaches very few people, and ultimately changes nothing as regards the outcome of this most disturbing trend. But it is important to speak out, else how do we push back? I'm going to quote from a book by Rosemary Sullivan entitled The Betrayal of Anne Frank, a cold case investigation. Anne and her family perished in the German concentration camps of World War II. However, her father Otto survived and was able to publish her diary of their many years in hiding in an attic, which is a testament to what happens when good people see evil and yet stand by and do nothing. The investigation took place over several years in an attempt to ascertain just who exactly betrayed the Frank family to the Nazis. In the end, the investigation still remains a question mark, despite the best efforts of their investigative team to uncover the identity of the person responsible. What stood out for me is the many similarities that the COVID pandemic response here at home elicited from complacent Canadians, and just how close we came and could come again to a repeat of this horrible event in our history. Instead of Hitler, we have a would-be dictator tyrant in Justin Trudeau, who has told us he admires China, and who no longer tries to hide his intentions to limit our freedoms. This was never more evident than during the Trucker Freedom Convoy, where Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, breaching our charter rights. Trudeau and Deputy Minister Chrystia Freeland both took delight in freezing bank accounts and ignored the pleas of regular Canadians to be heard. Why did the banks comply? Why did the jackboot police force? Trudeau called the convoy a fringe minority, and people who would not accept an experimental injection all kinds of derogatory names. His intentions were clear: divide and conquer. He still maintains he did none of the above, despite all the video evidence we have to the contrary. The 2 weeks to flatten the curve, which morphed into 3 years of brutal lockdowns and mandates, destroyed lives and fostered division amongst friends, family members, and neighbors, the likes of which this country has never seen. Pastors were hauled off to prison, mom and pop businesses were forcefully shuttered while big box stores were allowed to stay open. Children lost developmental years and benchmark moments in their lives that they will never get back. Quarantine hotels were foisted upon those who dared to move about the country or abroad. Fines were issued in the hundreds and thousands of dollars for any transgression of these rules. And where are the consequences? We're still waiting. And don't think that this whole scenario is in the rearview mirror, as the latest fear tactic will be the existential, in air quotes, threat of a changing climate. The government has seen how they can effectively take control of our lives and how meekly we submit. I will leave you with these few quotes from Rosemary Sullivan's book, the 2 words that we must continue to repeat that emanated from the horrid Hitler years are never forget. We must remember and pray that we never do. On page 290 from Otto Frank, the father of Anne Frank. Fascism builds slowly, and then one day it is an iron wall that looms and cannot be circumvented. He wanted them to know what can be lost and how fast it can happen. On page 292, across from the zoo in Amsterdam, where many Jews hid during the extermination years, there now stands a resistance museum, filled with the paraphernalia of the underground pressers for printing newspapers, pamphlets, fake ID, and food stamps, examples of grotesque anti-Semitic National Socialist propaganda, weapons for clandestine attacks. On the walls of the Resistance Museum are murals of NSB parades. Individual figures explain their motives for joining the Nazis. What attracted me was the energy, the singing, and the sense of belonging. Another quote quote, I saw only one choice, National Socialism or the chaos of communism. We couldn't make a living from the shop, and the NSB claimed things would get better for the middle class. Sound familiar? With Germany in power, membership of the NSB offered opportunities for starting a career. There was enormous poverty and division in our country. The NSB was opposed to such a pretense of democracy. And finally, leadership was something we could build a national community on. With too many choices, nothing gets decided, and there's always that self-interest hiding around the corner. Fascism, she says on page 293, counts on people's credulity, on their craving to believe, on their fear that there is nothing in which to believe. The parallels are hard to ignore, and if we do, it is at our own peril. So I conclude by saying, never forget. I pray we never do.